video entails is a discussion of style. In this case, the weirdly wonderful, fascinating style that is mannerism. This style is also complicated, and there is a lot that can be said about it. And what we're going to focus on in this video is one vein of mannerism, which is portraiture. For the first part of your assignment, you were asked to select an artist who you were interested in learning about further. But, and this is important to remember, the artist needs to date to the Baroque period, 17th century or earlier. Now, I personally am totally into the Mannerist artist Sofonisba Anguissola, and here's why. She's widely considered to be one of the first renowned female artists. She successfully navigated the male-dominated art world to make a name for herself in her own right as a successful and highly respected artist. And she's well known for her portraits. And that's what I'm going to concentrate on is one of her self-portraits, the one we see here, which is Self-Portrait with Clavichord. Now, this assignment is about style, so we don't want to include any biographical details. So in this case, who was Sofonisba, what was she all about, what she liked to do on the weekends, where'd she study. Those things we're not going to be looking at. We're just going to look about her art and the stylistic features of the art that she created. Now, style is a tool that art historians use to group artists together in terms of commonality. Style has two components. First, a visual component, and second, an ideological one. So what this means is that the works of art associated with this style are going to have common visual characteristics, and the works of art will also address similar ideas, or they'll operate from a similar context as well. So for this assignment, it's not only critical, but it's actually required that you address both the visual and ideological features of the style that your artist is affiliated with. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction for this video, Anguissola worked in the style of mannerism. So some common visual features for this style include, first, common subject matter. Oftentimes, styles will address certain subjects more often than others. For mannerism, portraiture was a very important genre. That term genre means a type of subject. Portraiture was an important genre, so this is a common visual feature of the style. Also common with mannerism was ambiguity, where it's not quite clear what's going on. Now, we're seeing this in two places. First, we see this ambiguity with the nondescript space that the subject occupies. It's not clear exactly where she is. And then second, you have this creepy lady in the background. This is ambiguous too. Who is she? What relationship does she have to the subject? And the artist who made this self-portrait, she isn't really telling us this information. Now let's talk about the ideology of the style. The style of mannerism coexisted with the Renaissance, the High Renaissance, and in many ways mannerism functioned as a counterpart to the rationalism and the classicism of the Renaissance. Anguissola's work demonstrates such a departure. Rather than featuring complicated space articulated through linear perspective and people in togas set against a backdrop of classical architecture, instead what we're presented with is a mysterious subject situated in an undefined space. Here, with mannerism, we have emphasis placed on elegance and style, rather than Renaissance's lofty values, their conservative principles, and the academicism of that style. Now, for the second part of the assignment, you're asked to build upon the work of your fellow student. This is your response. Build upon the work of your fellow student by expanding upon their discussion of style. So you'll do this by choosing a work of art by a different artist who worked in the same style. So in my post, I talked about mannerism and I talked about Sofonisba Anguissola. So if you were to respond to my post, you would also be talking about mannerism and you would choose an artist that worked in that same style. So I'm choosing to reply to myself, Bronzino, who was a really well-known Mannerist portrait painter. And he was like Anguissola in the sense that he too was well known for his portraits. This is where those two artists really excelled. This seems like a good comparison to me. Now, for your response, the assignment instructions ask you to do two things. First, you want to identify a similarity. What's one stylistic feature that both of these have in common? Then you're going to identify a difference. What do you see in the work that you selected that is common in terms of a feature of the style that, let me rephrase that. What do you see in your work of art that is a common feature of the style, but it didn't appear in the work discussed by your classmate? So let's start with the first one, similarity. So similarly with Bronzino and Anguissola, both works are characteristically manneristic in their emphasis placed on elegance and style. Although I would make the argument that Bronzino emphasizes this just a little bit more. Can we talk about that jacket? The craftsmanship of that jacket, so finely tailored, amazing fabric. This is an envy for sure. I want to know where I can get a jacket like that. We don't quite have perhaps that same concentration. She's stylish for sure, but this is next level right in here. Now let's talk about difference. One feature of the Bronzino work that is typical of Mannerist art, but is not seen in Anguissola's work, is eroticism. Mannerism work did tend to have a sexual and erotic component. Now, is it just me, or does there seem to be something kind of erotic about the way that this guy has his fingers in this book? And I even feel like this is kind of sexual in the sense that these fingers create this implied line that leads the viewer to the crotch. So this is kind of an erotic, subtly but there, typical of the Mannerist approach, but we don't see anything erotic or sexy in this piece here. Now, of course, this eroticism, as I said, is subtle, which makes it ambiguous. And we know that that's a typical feature of the Mannerist style.